Hello and welcome back to Automation Answers. This is day 2 of Modex in the afternoon. Very, very busy day so far. With me here is James Sharples from Swisslog, the Vice President of Global Acceleration and Managing Director of the UK.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Yeah. James, firstly, pleasure having you on. How are you doing? All good?
All good, yeah. It's been a busy couple of days at the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Some good meetings, good customer visits, so yeah, it's been good.
Awesome, good stuff. And how have you seen anything outside of Swisslog? Have you been walking around much, seen anything
I haven't
cool that's
really
caught
had a chance to walk around yet. A few things, a lot of stuff you see before, so it's kind of, I'm kind of looking out for the new stuff.
Of course.
Ocado being at the show is kind of interesting. I think it's one of the first times they've ever exhibited as a product, so really interesting to see their approach now, kind of selling it direct and going into non-food. It's really a change of strategy for them. So seeing their technology is kind of really interesting. They're not too far away from auto stores, so it's also interesting to compare.
Very small.
But I want to have a look, you know, we're showing our item pick robot, which is, it's kind of not new, but a lot of developments in the last kind of 12 months. And there's obviously a lot of other people offering that type of technology. So one of the things I want to do in the next couple of days is obviously go and look and see what everybody else is up to.
Yeah, of course, awesome. And I guess just the topic of the podcast, as the title will suggest as well, is where's the growth? Is the e-grocery world dead? And you mentioned Ocado, which is perfect. We'll jump into that in a sec. But I guess going back and talking about your background, it's been 25 years?
Yeah, 25 years at Swisslog.
Long time. How have things changed? I imagine a lot.
A lot. Years. I mean, a lot in the industry. You know, when I started at Swisslog, it was, we were doing projects in automotive, car body stores, pallet stores, you know, showing my age, but e-commerce wasn't such a big thing.
Yeah, of course.
25 years ago. And I think, you know, logistics and automated, kind of intralogistics, that's kind of what's interesting. That's what kind of kept me at Swisslog. It's such a industry that changes rapidly. There's always something new technology, different customers. It kind of keeps the interest. And today, you know, we're talking, you know, AI, robotics, vision, and it's, you know, it's a constant change, and I think everybody's kind of running to keep up.
Of course.
And kind of keeps it interesting, keeps it fresh.
Of course.
25 years sounds like a long time. It is a long time, but for me, it's still fresh. It's still, you still learn. Talking to customers, that's what I love to do. And I think there's still, you know, still a lot of customers. Automation in logistics is still a growth market. It's still not highly developed, the kind of rate of penetration. So I think still something like 80% of warehouses still fully manual. So the potential is still huge for that industry. So it's going to grow. You know, Swisslog's been a good company for me to be at, giving me lots of opportunities. I've worked around the world.
Of course.
You know, it's been it's something I've really enjoyed.
And was it a bit of an off-piece question to the main subject? But when you started 25 years ago, was it easy to sell solutions?
It's still never easy.
Of course. But I mean, more just the awareness. I think if I look back, I've been industry not as long as yourself, 7 years. I think when I started, I had no idea what goes on behind the scenes. So you click buy online, if it's retail or grocery, whatever it is, you've got no idea what's going on. And that's me being in industry 7 years ago. And I think with social media, with LinkedIn, I think you've been seeing like Amazon adverts at Christmas. They're showing the warehouse, so you can kind of see what's going on now. But 25 years ago, when LinkedIn wasn't even present,
I think it's a different market. It was a lot around. We did a lot of work in food and beverage, kind of pallet systems for manufacturers, kind of the likes of Coca-Cola or PepsiCo. Typical. I've got a factory. I'm making a lot of pallets. I need to store them and then ship them the next day. And for a lot of years, that was kind of the typical projects. And then more around kind of retail, store fulfillment, and more. I think there's just over that time, there's been a lot of acceptance of technology. Automation was kind of a scary topic. At one point, you know, there's been periods in the industry where people have done projects, they don't always go well. And sometimes that kind of can really slow the industry down because you get this reputation where automation is inflexible. And I think that perception's changed a lot. I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was like a big topic. And now you see a lot more development of technology, which is kind of more modular, more flexible, potentially.
Yeah, of course.
It's an overused term, but, and I think the kind of level of acceptance of automation itself. You can see it with the likes of, nobody questions like AutoStore.
Of course.
That's been on the market 10 years. It was really a revolutionary product 10 years ago. Now it's just accepted. It's everywhere. It's I think they have more than 1,000 systems out in the wild. So that's changed, but I mean, it's still a competitive marketplace.
Of course.
There's still a lot of companies that are trying to sell to those customers. And I think, but it's changed. That's, the value proposition to the customer is what's important. Yeah, price, of course, always going to be, at the end of the day, important, but it's also around kind of how confident is the customer in how you can deliver. Are you going to be there in the long run? Are you going to be there in 10 years' time? Because a lot of people look at these systems and it takes, it can be a long lead time, 12, 18 months to sell a project, another 12 to 2 years to deliver it, depending on the size. But it's going to, excuse me, operate for the next 20 years. And I think people are really got to look for that. It's a partnership. Sometimes talk about it. It's like getting married. The project is really just the honeymoon. It's about the next 20 years when you're operating it, and it's got to be maintained and looked after. And how does it adapt to your business changing? That's really the core of these projects.
Of course.
The exciting project is kind of the kind of just the starting point.
Of course. And do you feel people are a bit? You mentioned the 4 years, the honeymoon phase, and then the longer term marriage. Do you think people are a bit short-sighted with COVID, because that's obviously changed the world and how we shop? Because
I think there's definitely changes in the kind of expectations from customers. Their business is under pressure, lead times. It's not about next day delivery, it's same day delivery.
Of course.
I want to order it and pick it up in an hour. All of those things put a lot of pressure on the warehouse, on that supply chain. And that's where a lot of the advances is how do you support that type of business? And as a consumer, it's great if I order something from Amazon, it even comes the same day. I don't need it the same day, but it's going to arrive. But that takes a lot of infrastructure behind it. And I think it's what's a lot of what's driving the market is kind of that continuous pressure from, not necessarily always driven by the consumer, but somebody offers next day delivery, somebody's going to then extend the cut-off time, and it kind of, the market kind of drives itself. So it's why it's interesting, because it's always new challenges and how people adapt. How people adapt to COVID. Saw a big growth in e-com, kind of home shopping for grocery. It's the only way you couldn't get out to the shop, so you've got to go online. And I think everybody's kind of, I think we went through a period 2020, 21 when almost that was like the norm. And I think you saw a big growth in e-grocery. And that type of fulfillment, you saw the growth of kind of quick commerce companies. Because that was the need at the time. But, the world's kind of reset itself a little bit. We're back to kind of more normal levels. And you mentioned e-grocery. I think you see not a slowdown, because I think it's still a kind of critical topic. It's still growing. But I think people are still finding what's the right solution, what's the right strategy for them, what's the offering to the customer. We've done some great projects with HEB in Texas, and their model's great. Pick up in store, 4-hour delivery window. Around the world, it's different. In Europe, it's much more, I'll go online, I'll pick a delivery slot 2 days ahead. And that's when even within that, I think everybody's looking at what's the right strategy. Micro fulfillment came up as a big topic 2 years ago. I think everybody's some people are still looking at that as a strategy. I mean, in principle, it worked that, reduce that last mile. But then the servicing those MFCs, how do you make them efficient? How do you make money out of them? I think we're seeing more of a trend towards going to more regional, larger facilities. That's the way for the retailers to actually make a profit out of it.
Of course,
they need the volume. They need a bigger system. But I say that again. That's just constantly changing. Something else, a different technology might come along.
Of course.
Change that dynamic, and then you'll be back into even smaller. So I say that's one of the interesting things about the market is that kind of it's very dynamic. It changes so fast, and it's a lot of the time it's who can kind of keep up.
Of course.
With that rate of change, they come out as the winners.
Of course.
It's an interesting industry to be in.
Yeah, of course, definitely. So it keeps us on our toes, that's for sure. And you mentioned the technologies. I'll jump into the Swisslog item pick in a second. But a point, I'm certainly not a reflection of the whole e-grocery market, but I think what we've seen, I saw a stat a few days ago, something like 70 or 80% of individuals in the US anyway live within like a 15-mile radius of a Walmart, right? So speaking for myself as well, you mentioned earlier, during COVID, obviously couldn't leave the house. I was doing all my online shopping.
Sure.
I've now completely stopped that. Obviously, I'm not a representation of the whole of the market, but my point is, you mentioned obviously there will be that natural growth, of course, but can we see the world going back to the COVID boom as per se in the e-grocery world?
Not as fast and not as quickly. So there was always, I don't know the kind of CAGR rates of growth. It was always kind of predicted to be 15-18%. Slightly higher in North America compared to kind of Europe, but I think everybody's still looking at it and how to fulfill those orders.
Of course.
Do you just pick in store? It's not very kind of convenient for the consumers in the store, but it's a way of doing it at low investment. Some people have gone to a level of automation. Some people are, you see the centralized larger systems. Arcado's model. There's different ways of kind of solving that problem, but I don't think anybody's got that kind of magic bullet to solve it.
Did.
I mean, it'd be great. You'd make millions, but I think it's still developing. It's still kind of quite early on. I mean, online grocery is still less than 20% of kind of a grocer's overall volume. So still, majority of people are still going to store. And doing their normal kind of shop. That will grow.
Of course.
But it's not going to grow at the rate. I mean, COVID was a kind of one in a generation event that kind of changed that dynamic completely. And I think that's why you see it's just gone back to almost the pre-COVID levels and going back to the kind of expected growth rate from 2019. It's kind of that was a shock to the system. But everybody's still trying to find an efficient way to do it. For the retailers, it's still something they have to offer. And they're obviously changing their proposition. Pick up in store's great. They've already got a delivery system to a store. So if I can send those orders there, then that's a lower cost fulfillment for them. I think it's just something that is going to continuously to develop, and then as new technologies, we've done a big kind of internal study looking at e-grocery fulfillment. How do you make it more efficient? Looking at kind of an overall kind of productivity rate within the warehouse. And that's where something like robotic item picking can really make it more cost effective. If I can automate a kind of majority of that picking process, then that makes those kind of fulfillment centers more kind of profitable for the retailer. So
I think it's easy, and I mentioned, I mean, my personal situation is not a reflection of the whole market, and I think you can look at the negative press. I guess it's about managing expectations, right? Because I think it's not a true reflection. It's something that needs to be considered. But I was looking at like the Ocado share price, for example. They're a huge leader, right? Ocado is Kroger in the US, Waitrose or M&S in the UK, and various other suppliers across globally. Their share price since COVID is dramatically decreased. There's a million factors that come to that, not just because of the market isn't growing. So they had the court case and debacle with AutoStore, and then they had a few fires in the UK, etc. So a number of other things, and they've invested a lot as well into their R&D. But that doesn't look great. But I guess it's about, like I said, managing expectations. The market is picking up, obviously, hence why you're investing in the item pick, but just not at the rate of what COVID drove us to, right?
I think that whole market is being kind of challenged by the new products that are coming online. We've seen in the last few years huge growth in that kind of cube-based, kind of ultra density. Robotics at the show. There's other suppliers that are trying to get into that game.
Yeah, of course.
And then the whole AMR market, with the developments. I was at the High Robotics stand today. You see they've got their kind of ACR robot.
Yeah.
Again, all trying to compete on density against kind of, that's where AutoStore really wins. It's still kind of, for most applications, up to kind of normal warehouse heights. AutoStore still a more dense solution. But the others are starting to grow. They're starting to compete with that. And density is not always the biggest driver. In some countries, maybe it's a big driver. Certainly in this market, it's not necessarily in the North American market. It's not necessarily the biggest priority. So I think we'll see other technologies also kind of develop and challenge some of those. You know, it's I say it's a changing market.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And you mentioned obviously the item pick as well, not just pigeonholing into the e-grocery space. There's other applications.
I think
how does that work? What's the benefits of the item pick? And
I think we've put a lot of investment into that and really want something that's robust, that works in a range of industries. You know, the requirements to handle grocery, packaged goods, tins, bottles, cans, whatever it is. If I'm item picking grocery, then generally the products are pretty good. The packaging's quite good. There's still the fruits and vegetables and things which are more difficult and soft products. But if you look at apparel, then we can have kind of flat apparel and poly bags, just handling textiles directly. You know, they bring different challenges.
Of course.
You know, textiles is interesting. You can't get a kind of perfect seal. So you need to, you know, we've done a lot of development on our item pick, kind of two main thrusts. One in terms of gripping technology. So we've gone into having a changeable end effector, so we can have really then be specific for a certain customer, depending on their product range, the right type of grippers, the kind of really the right materials, the right size. Give that flexibility to handle a wider range as possible. So the gripper, that kind of really changed the game for us in terms of the range of products.
Excellent. And
then the kind of big step on has been in the vision and the AI technology. And that for item pick, it's really that's the heart of the system. The brain, that some people refer to covariant, call it the brain.
Sounds like covariant earlier.
But it is. I mean, that's what it is. And I think what we've seen big developments in that in terms of functionality. And I think we learned a lot from some of our pilots. You need to. It's not just about having something that picks fast. It's got to be reliable. It's got to be consistent. Got to eliminate kind of interventions. Got to be able to understand. The robot's got to understand if it's picked the wrong thing or if it's picked two items instead of one. It's got to be able to deal with those itself.
Why is that?
You can't just stop the robot and have a manual intervention every time. The robot's got to be able to self-recover or understand what's happening.
Of course.
And I think that's kind of really interesting how that's come on.
Absolutely.
Because that's kind of makes those installations far more kind of user friendly. More robust is the word I like to use, because that's what I need, something that if we're going to put it in, it's going to work. It can work non-stop all day, all night. And what I don't want is it stopping because of these errors. I want it to be able to self-recover, just run consistently.
Of course.
There might be some errors where we have to kind of deal with it down line, but then we know. We had an example on the booth today. We were picking some hair grip products. We picked up one, but the actual grips themselves had kind of got caught on another package.
Understood.
We recognised that we'd picked up two. We kind of can trigger that. We can mark the bin and saying, there's two of that product in. And then really, then it's up to the customer. Are they happy shipping? You know,
excess.
Over. Or do they want to deal with it? Do they deal with it at a kind of reject station? Do they send it to a QA station? Is it going to go through a pack process? It really depends on how they want the operation to run, rather than what I don't want to do is stop the robot.
Of course.
So it's all about keeping the robot running all the time to get the most efficiency out of it.
Of course. And I think it's a question I ask a lot, but I find it really fascinating to know the answer from different individuals and from different businesses. You mentioned then, I always come back to that as well. I think the most importantly, the robot or the automation can't stop because then I don't get my groceries on time. That's the number one.
Yeah.
On the flip side, when you're looking into these new technologies, you're looking at AI, it's going to make mistakes. It's not perfect and it might not ever will be. So how do you find that balance between you need to push this new technologies to a customer? So this is the new exciting technology, but making sure it's reliable so they still hit their
I think
numbers.
for us, we're kind of, I think the whole technology is still in that early adopter phase. Yeah, and there's not, I said at the beginning, the market is, maybe it's before we started.
It was off camera,
But the market is really predicted to grow in the next few years. The cost of labour is only going up. Availability of labour is only becoming more difficult. And the price of the robotics will come down and down. The capability of the robots will increase. So I think today what you see is people bringing that technology to market. They're trying to develop it. They want to work with customers that are open to going through that process together. We're looking for kind of pilot customers in different industries because we need real world experience. We can test in the lab. We've got robots kind of picking all day long testing, but we want to do it in a real environment, real products. And I think what we see is talking to customers that are open to that sort of engagement, that we can develop with them. They get the benefit of kind of what that technology can do to their business.
Of course.
Even if we put in one robot as a trial, they can then learn from that. What range can it cover? How well does it perform? How kind of robust is it in that real world environment? We certainly aim to work with those customers. They get all of the updates and benefits from the developments in the AI, which is kind of almost daily, weekly improvements, and they'll get all the access to those upgrades. And we want to work with them to look at those kind of process topics, really find the optimum way of installing that kind of technology within their warehouses. And then it opens the door to say, okay, I'm planning the next one, or I've got the potential to maybe retrofit. There's a bigger kind of opportunity there where we can use robots in different applications. So the market will kick off. It's kind of expected to grow really quickly when we get into kind of 26, 27, 28. The market's expected to kind of grow really rapidly. From a Swisslog point of view, we want to be part of that journey. And that means starting now and working with customers that we can get the learnings and prepare and be ready for that when the market kind of is ready to really embrace that technology. Then we're ready, and we've got a great product.
And I think you kind of segued nicely into probably my concluding and final question. You mentioned 2028, so I always like to ask at the end of a conversation, next 5-10 years, where do you see, not necessarily just the item pick, I guess just the industry in general? I know we've alluded to it a lot. It's going in one direction only, but where do you see the item pick, and where do you see the?
I think the item picking is definitely going to be something. I think in 10 years' time, it's going to be everywhere. I think the advances in the technology, particularly this kind of software capability, the AI learning, you kind of try and look ahead. The capability of that is going to be exponentially greater in 10 years' time than today. So I think the future is definitely in that direction. I think you've got to then you need the engines behind it, the kind of ASRS or the cube system, whatever technology it is to kind of feed that. And I think you see those technologies maybe take time to get accepted and adopted in the market. You can use AutoStore as an example. We kind of started working with them probably more than 10 years ago. But again, that growth has been kind of almost exponential. First few years, everybody kind of understand the technology, learning where it fits, and then you start to see it grow rapidly year on year because one, it's kind of accepted, people understand it, they know where it fits. You get that capability of being able to deliver. AutoStore also bring in other distributors,
of course.
More people selling it. But it starts to grow kind of very, very quickly, and I think some other technologies are on that same path. I don't think it'll take them 10 years because I think the route to market is probably quicker. I think the acceptance of technology is greater. And so I think that won't take as long. And I think we'll see a lot of development in in that kind of mobile robotics technology, supporting kind of the automation. I think that's the kind of big topic I see for the next few years.
I think that's what I alluded to earlier when we were talking. I think it was off camera about just like I said, just the LinkedIn and the branding, and you see automation everywhere, right? So it's just so much more accepted, which hopefully will accelerate that. So
absolutely,
completely agree. Awesome. Well, James, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I think this will be my last podcast from Atlanta. So this is the end of my Modex journey. I'll be walking around tomorrow though, so that'll be good. Appreciate you busy. So thanks so much for coming on. And speak to you soon.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Cheers.